The tablecloth was a pristine, starched white, so thick it felt like felted wool under Lila Moreau's trembling fingers. It was the only thing she could touch that didn't feel like a lie. The crystal glass of water sweated onto a coaster, the silver cutlery gleamed under the recessed lighting, and the low, contented murmur of the other patrons at Restaurant Delmonico filled the air with a hum of opulent peace. But peace was a foreign country, and Lila's visa had long since expired. Her gaze was fixed on the intricate pattern of her untouched risotto, the creamy rice and saffron forming a perfect, golden swirl. To inhale its aroma felt like a betrayal of the terror coiling in her stomach. To eat would be impossible. "You're not eating, darling," Darren Mitchell purred, his voice a silken thread of performative concern loud enough for the couple at the adjacent table to hear. His smile was a masterpiece of handsome deception, all white teeth and charming crinkles around his eyes. But under the table, his hand was a vice on her thigh. His fingers dug into the soft flesh, a brutal counterpoint to his gentle tone. The pressure was precise, targeting the tender skin on her inner leg where the bruises wouldn't be immediately visible. He knew exactly what he was doing. Lila forced a smile that felt like cracking porcelain. "It's delicious. I'm just savoring it." Darren's thumb pressed harder, a sharp, punitive spike of pain that made her gasp, a tiny, choked sound she swallowed down with a sip of water. His eyes, a brilliant, cold blue, held hers. He leaned in, the scent of his expensive cologne a nauseating cloud. "When we leave," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss that was for her alone, "you'll be lying in a pool of blood." Ice flooded her veins. It was the same threat, the same promise that had been the soundtrack to the last year of their relationship. A year she thought was over. 3 months. She had been free for 3 blissful, quiet months. She'd changed her number, blocked him on everything, and started checking over her shoulder a little less. She'd started to feel the sun on her skin again. Then, 2 days ago, he had been waiting for her outside the elementary school where she taught first grade, a bouquet of lilies in one hand and that same predatory smile on his face. He said he'd made a reservation to celebrate their reunion. It was not a request. Now, trapped in this gilded cage of a restaurant, the illusion of her freedom was crumbling into dust. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to get up, to run, to scream. But she knew what would happen if she did. He would cause a scene, but a scene of her making. He would play the part of the concerned, heartbroken boyfriend dealing with his unstable, emotional girlfriend. He'd done it before. And the real punishment would come later, behind closed doors, where no one could hear. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. She risked a glance around the room, a desperate, silent plea to a world that wasn't listening. Rich couples laughed, their hands intertwined. A family celebrated a quiet birthday. Everything was normal. No one could see the shark lurking just beneath the placid surface of their little table for two. Except, maybe one person. At the table to her left, a man sat alone. He'd been there when they arrived, a silent, unmoving statue of a man. He was dressed in a suit so exquisitely tailored it seemed to be a part of him, the dark charcoal fabric making him a figure of shadow and substance in the warmly lit room. His hair was black, with distinguished threads of silver at the temples, and his profile was sharp, severe. A glass of deep red wine sat untouched before him. He wasn't eating. He wasn't reading. He was just watching. Observing the room with an unnerving stillness. For a terrifying second, Lila felt his gaze slide over her, and it was nothing like the leering look she was used to. It was heavy. Analytical. It felt as though he could see the frantic pulse in her neck, the fine tremor in her hands, the lie of the smile plastered on her face. She quickly dropped her eyes back to her plate, her cheeks burning with a fresh wave of shame and fear. Of course he wasn't looking at her. Why would he be? He was just another wealthy patron, a man who belonged in a world of power and starched white tablecloths, a world she was only visiting as a prisoner. "What are you looking at?" Darren's voice sliced through her thoughts. "Nothing," she said quickly, her voice barely a whisper. "Just the decor." His grip tightened again, a final, vicious squeeze. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." He then released her thigh, and the sudden absence of pain was as shocking as its presence. He dabbed his lips with his napkin, the picture of civility. "I'm going to use the restroom. Don't even think about moving." He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and gave her a smile so loving, so utterly fake, that it made her stomach churn. He turned and walked away, his stride confident and proprietary. The moment he was gone, the air rushed back into Lila's lungs. It was a tainted, temporary relief, but it was oxygen all the same. She had a minute. Maybe two. What could she do? Run? He'd catch her in the parking lot. Scream? He'd turn it against her. Her mind raced, a frantic maze with no exit. Tears pricked the backs of her eyes, hot and useless. She squeezed them shut, her hands clenched into fists in her lap. Think, Lila, think. A soft, almost imperceptible sound broke through her panic. It was the gentle scrape of a chair on the polished wood floor. Her eyes snapped open. The man from the table beside her was standing. But he wasn't leaving. He was looking directly at her. His face was unreadable, carved from stone, but his eyes, dark and intense, held hers. There was no pity in them, no idle curiosity. There was something else. A quiet, terrifying sort of recognition. He took a single, deliberate step toward her table. His movements were fluid, economical, radiating a quiet authority that made the ambient noise of the restaurant seem to fade into the background. Every instinct screamed at Lila to look away, to make herself small and invisible, but she was frozen, pinned by the sheer force of his presence. He stopped beside her chair, a tall, imposing shadow. He didn't speak. He simply reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and produced a single, heavy card, matte black with elegant silver lettering. He placed it softly on the white tablecloth, right beside her trembling hand. His eyes met hers one last time, a silent, loaded command. Then, just as silently as he had come, he turned and walked, not back to his table, but toward the restaurant's private exit, disappearing behind a velvet curtain without a sound. Lila stared at the card. Her heart wasn't just hammering anymore, it was trying to break free. She could feel the seconds ticking away until Darren returned. With a hand that shook so badly she could barely control it, she reached out and turned the card over. There was no name. No number. Just 3 words, embossed in stark, silver script. Are you safe? The 3 words on the card burned into Lila's vision like a brand. Are you safe? Such a simple question. Such an impossible one to answer. She flipped the card over again, searching for something more, a phone number, an address, a name, but there was nothing. Just those 3 devastating words and the weight of a stranger's attention. A stranger who had somehow seen what no one else ever did. The carefully hidden cracks in her facade. The silent scream behind her smile. Lila's mind spun. Who was he? Why did he care? And more terrifying still, what did he expect her to do with this question? Her fingers closed around the card, and in one swift motion, she slipped it into the small clutch purse on her lap, hiding it just as the sound of Darren's footsteps approached from behind. The familiar cadence of his gait made her entire body tense, a Pavlovian response to months of learned fear. He slid back into his seat with the easy grace of a man who owned every room he entered. "Did you miss me?" he asked, that charming smile back in place. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb stroking over her knuckles in a gesture that would look tender to anyone watching. But Lila felt the pressure points. The subtle way his grip could shift from caress to restraint in a heartbeat. "Of course," she whispered, the lie as automatic as breathing. Darren had not always been a monster. That was the cruelest part. When they'd met 2 years ago at a charity fundraiser for the school district, he had been magnetic. Successful, attentive, generous with his compliments and his time. He remembered everything she said. He brought her favorite coffee to her classroom. He made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Lila had grown up quiet and unassuming, the middle child in a family of loud personalities. She learned early that the safest place was in the background, that taking up space invited conflict. Teaching first grade was perfect for her. She could pour all her nurturing energy into children who needed her, who looked at her like she hung the moon when she read them stories or helped them sound out words. But romantic love? That had always felt like something that happened to other people. Bolder people. Prettier people. Until Darren. He pursued her with the focused intensity of a man on a mission. 3 months of perfect dates, thoughtful gestures, and passionate declarations. He told her she was beautiful, that she was special, that he'd been searching for someone exactly like her his whole life. She fell hard and fast, tumbling into a love that felt like finally coming home. The first time he grabbed her arm too hard, he cried. He apologized for hours, brought her flowers, swore it would never happen again. He'd been stressed at work, he said. He'd never forgive himself. Lila, who had been raised to forgive, to smooth over conflict, to not make waves, believed him. The second time, he had an excuse too. And the third. By the fourth, he stopped apologizing. The mask had slipped completely, revealing the controlling, violent man underneath. He monitored her phone. Isolated her from friends. Told her no one else would ever love someone as broken, as difficult, as pathetic as her. And the worst part? Some damaged part of Lila had started to believe him. It took her neighbor, sweet Mrs. Chen, a 70-year-old widow who brought her soup and asked too many questions, calling the police after hearing Lila's muffled cries through the apartment wall to finally break the spell. The officer who responded was a woman with kind eyes who sat with Lila for 2 hours, never once pressuring her, just listening. Just bearing witness. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of restraining orders that Darren ignored, of therapy sessions where Lila tried to untangle the knot of shame and fear in her chest, of slowly, painfully rebuilding a sense of self she'd lost. 3 months of freedom. Until 2 days ago, when Darren appeared outside her school like a ghost she couldn't exorcise, smiling that same charming smile, acting as if the past had never happened. As if the bruises, the threats, the police reports were all just a misunderstanding between two people in love. You've been distant lately, Darren said now, his voice dropping to that dangerous softness. I'm trying here, Lila. I came back for you. I forgave you for calling the cops, for embarrassing me like that. The least you could do is try. Forgave her. As if she were the transgressor. The familiar twist of guilt wormed through her chest before she could stop it. That old, toxic reflex to take responsibility for his feelings, his actions, his violence. I am trying, she said quietly, hating herself for saying it. Try harder. He squeezed her hand, just short of painful. Smile. We're supposed to be celebrating. Celebrating what? The death of her brief taste of freedom? The inevitability of going back to a life of walking on eggshells and covering bruises? Lila forced her lips to curve upward. She wondered if anyone had ever died from smiling when their heart was breaking. Across the restaurant, she could see the velvet curtain where the dark-suited stranger had disappeared. Dominic Valori, she'd heard the hostess greet him by name when they'd first arrived, her tone hushed and respectful in a way that suggested he was someone important. Someone powerful. And he had asked if she was safe. No one asked that question unless they already knew the answer. The waiter appeared, refilling their water glasses with practiced efficiency. Is everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Mitchell? He asked, his tone polite but notably cooler than it had been earlier. Perfect, Darren said, flashing that $1,000,000 smile. This place really is something special. The waiter's eyes flicked to Lila, just for a second, and she saw it, a flash of concern, quickly masked. He'd noticed something. Or maybe he'd been told to notice. She dropped her gaze to her lap, her pulse quickening. What was happening? Will there be anything else? The waiter asked. Just the check when you get a chance, Darren replied. I think we're ready to head out. Those words sent ice through Lila's veins. Leaving meant the car. The car meant her apartment or his. Either way, it meant being alone with him. It meant the bruises he'd promised. It meant the nightmare beginning all over again, and this time she wasn't sure she'd have the strength to escape a second time. Her hand found the small, hard edge of the black card in her purse. Are you safe? No, she wanted to scream. No, I'm not safe. I've never been safe. But she'd never been able to scream. Not when it mattered. Actually, a deep, smooth voice said from behind her, the evening is on the house. Lila's breath caught. She didn't need to turn around to know who was speaking. Darren's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his handsome features before settling into polite bewilderment. I'm sorry. The man, Dominic Valori, moved into view, positioning himself at the edge of their table with the kind of casual authority that came from never having to justify his presence anywhere. Up close, he was even more imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that was striking rather than handsome, all sharp angles and quiet, dangerous intelligence. The meal, Dominic said, his voice even, accent unplaceable, perhaps Italian, perhaps simply cultured. It's been taken care of. A gesture of hospitality. His dark eyes rested on Lila for just a fraction of a second, and in that brief glance, she felt seen. Truly seen. Not the performance she was giving, but the terrified woman underneath. Then his gaze shifted to Darren, and the temperature of the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I don't understand, Darren said, his charm slipping slightly, replaced by the edge of something territorial. Do we know each other? No, Dominic replied. But I know my restaurant. And I know when a guest is uncomfortable. The word hung in the air like a blade. Darren's jaw tightened. I think my girlfriend is perfectly comfortable. Aren't you, darling? Both men looked at Lila. The weight of their attention was crushing. This was the moment. The choice. The stranger was offering her an exit, a lifeline thrown into dark water. All she had to do was reach for it. But Darren's eyes promised consequences. Promised pain. And Lila had spent a lifetime choosing silence over safety. What do you think Lila should do? Have you ever felt trapped in a situation where speaking up felt impossible? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter. Her lips parted. The word trembled on her tongue. And the choice she was about to make would change everything. The silence stretched like a wire-pulled taut, ready to snap. Lila's heart hammered so violently she was certain both men could hear it. Darren's eyes bored into her, a silent command wrapped in a threat. That look had controlled her for so long, had shaped her responses, her words, her very thoughts. It was the look that said, choose wrong, and you'll pay for it later. But Dominic Valori's presence beside the table was immovable, patient. He wasn't rushing her. Wasn't demanding. He was simply waiting. Giving her space to breathe, to choose. And in that space, something inside Lila cracked. Her voice came out barely a whisper, fragile as spun glass. She swallowed hard, tasting fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. I'm not comfortable. The words were so quiet she wasn't sure anyone heard them. But Dominic's slight nod told her he had. Darren's face transformed. The charming mask shattered, replaced by cold fury. What did you just say? The lady has answered, Dominic said, his voice still calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of steel. I think it's time for you to leave, Mr. Mitchell. Darren's chair scraped back as he stood, his 6-foot frame squaring up. He was tall, athletic, used to intimidating through presence alone. I don't know who the hell you think you are, but you need to mind your own business. Lila and I are having a private dinner. In my restaurant, Dominic replied, not moving an inch. Everything is my business. Your restaurant? Darren laughed, sharp and mocking. Listen, friend, I don't care if you own the place or just work here. This is between me and my girl. She is not your girl. Dominic's words cut through Darren's bluster like a knife through silk. Something in his tone had changed. It was still quiet, still controlled, but there was a quality to it now that made Lila's breath catch, a resonance of absolute authority. Of power that didn't need to be loud to be felt. Several nearby conversations had stopped. Lila noticed 3 men in dark suits positioned at strategic points around the restaurant. By the main entrance, near the kitchen, by the velvet curtain. They hadn't been obvious before, but now they were watching intently, hands folded, bodies still but ready. When had they moved into position? Darren noticed too. His confidence flickered, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Are you threatening me? No, Dominic said simply. I am telling you. The lady is not comfortable. You will leave. Now. And if I don't? Darren's hand shot out and grabbed Lila's wrist, yanking her to her feet with brutal force. She gasped in pain, stumbling against the table. She's coming with me. We came together, we're leaving together. Right, Lila. His fingers dug into the delicate bones of her wrist, grinding them together. Tears sprang to Lila's eyes. The restaurant blurred around her. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading. He was going to drag her out of here, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. He was stronger. He was always stronger. What happened next occurred so fast that Lila barely processed it. Dominic moved. One moment he was standing still, the next his hand was locked around Darren's wrist, the one holding Lila captive. His grip must have been excruciating because Darren's face went white, his fingers spasming open involuntarily, releasing Lila. "You've made a mistake," Dominic said quietly, his face inches from Darren's. "A significant one." Darren tried to pull away, tried to jerk his arm free, but Dominic held him effortlessly. The veins in Darren's neck stood out with the strain. "Let go of me, you gentleman." One of the dark-suited men had appeared beside them, his expression neutral but his presence menacing. "Is there a problem, Mr. Valori?" "Mr. Valori. Not just a guest. The owner." Lila had suspected but hadn't been sure. "Mr. Mitchell was just leaving," Dominic said. He released Darren's wrist with a slight push that sent him stumbling back a step. "Permanently." Darren cradled his wrist, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. "You can't ban me from a restaurant for—" "I can ban you from all of my restaurants for putting your hands on a woman," Dominic interrupted. "All 14 of them across this city and the next 3 states. Your name and photograph will be circulated to every establishment I have business with, and I have business with many. You'll find doors suddenly closed to you, Mr. Mitchell. Reservations mysteriously unavailable. It's remarkable how quickly word travels in certain circles." The threat was delivered with such calm precision that it took a moment for the full weight of it to land. 14 restaurants. Business connections spanning multiple states. This wasn't just a restaurateur. This was someone with reach. Influence. Power. Lila watched realization dawn on Darren's face, the understanding that he'd miscalculated badly. But his ego wouldn't let him retreat gracefully. "You think you can intimidate me?" Darren snarled. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll—" "You have nothing," Dominic said, and there was something almost pitying in his tone. "You are a small man who hurts women because it's the only way you can feel powerful. I've seen 1,000 like you. You are unremarkable." The word landed like a slap. Darren lunged forward, fist raised, and Lila screamed, but he never reached Dominic. The 2 dark-suited men were there instantly, intercepting him with practiced efficiency. They didn't hurt him, didn't even seem to exert much effort, but suddenly Darren was immobilized, his arms secured, his forward momentum completely stopped. "Escort Mr. Mitchell to his vehicle," Dominic said calmly, adjusting his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. "Make sure he understands that returning to any of my properties would be unwise." "You can't do this," Darren shouted as he was maneuvered toward the exit. His eyes found Lila's, blazing with fury. "This isn't over. You hear me, Lila? This isn't over. You're mine. You'll always be." The heavy door closed behind him, cutting off his threats mid-sentence. And just like that, he was gone. The restaurant seemed to exhale collectively. The ambient conversation resumed, though Lila noticed several patrons watching with undisguised interest. Her legs went weak, threatening to give out beneath her. She gripped the edge of the table, her entire body shaking with an adrenaline crash so intense she felt nauseated. "Sit," Dominic said gently, and suddenly his hand was on her elbow, steadying, not restraining. The difference was everything. She collapsed into her chair. The room spun. She couldn't catch her breath. "Put your head down," Dominic instructed, his voice cutting through the panic. "Breathe slowly. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign. Impossible. Lila forced herself to breathe, to focus. Gradually, the spinning slowed. The white noise in her ears receded. When she finally raised her head, Dominic was seated across from her, in Darren's chair, and the table had been discreetly cleared of their dinner. A glass of water sat in front of her, and a small plate with what looked like fresh bread and olive oil. "Small bites," Dominic said. "It will help with the shock." I can't." Lila's voice cracked. Tears she'd been holding back for hours, days, months, suddenly broke free. She covered her face with her hands, mortified to be falling apart in front of this stranger, but utterly unable to stop. She felt rather than saw Dominic gesture to someone. A moment later, a soft cloth napkin was pressed gently into her hand, and when she looked up through her tears, she saw that a privacy screen had been positioned around their table, shielding them from the curious eyes of the other diners. "Take your time," Dominic said quietly. And so she cried. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Lila let herself break, because for the first time in even longer, she felt safe enough to do so. When the storm finally passed, leaving her wrung out and exhausted, she wiped her eyes with the napkin and forced herself to meet Dominic's gaze. "Why did you help me?" she whispered. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Because no one should have to endure what you were enduring. And because I could. I don't even know you." "No," he agreed. "But I know men like him. And I do not allow them to operate with impunity, especially not in my establishments." Lila thought of the coordinated response, the security team, the casual mention of 14 restaurants and far-reaching connections. "You're not just a restaurant owner, are you?" The corner of Dominic's mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "I am many things, Miss Moreau. A restaurant owner is one of them." The fact that he knew her name sent a small shiver down her spine. She hadn't introduced herself. "You're afraid of me now," he observed. "Should I be?" He considered this. "I am not a good man by most definitions. But I have a code, and that code does not permit the abuse of women. You are safe from him. And you are safe from me. This I promise you." There was something in the way he said it, the weight of absolute certainty, that made Lila believe him, despite every reasonable instinct telling her to be wary. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Dominic said, "you have a choice. I can have one of my men drive you home. I can arrange for a hotel room if you don't feel safe there. Or—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You can stay, finish your dinner in peace, and we can discuss how to ensure Mr. Mitchell understands that his harassment of you ends tonight." Lila's breath caught. "I have a restraining order. It hasn't stopped him." "Paper is fragile," Dominic agreed. "I am not." It was both a promise and a threat, though not to her. Lila knew she should be terrified. This man commanded authority in a way that suggested connections far beyond the restaurant industry. The efficiency of his security, the ease with which he'd controlled the situation, the dangerous calm he radiated, it all pointed to something darker, more complex than a simple businessman. But for the first time in 3 months, Darren's threats didn't feel like an inevitable future. They felt like a problem that could be solved. And Lila was so very tired of being afraid. "I'll stay," she said quietly. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, approval, perhaps. Or interest. "A wise choice, Miss Moreau," he said. "Now, let's get you something proper to eat. And then you're going to tell me everything about Darren Mitchell. Every detail. Every threat. Every incident." "Why?" This time, he did smile. It was a subtle thing, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his severe face into something almost warm. "Because, Miss Moreau, I am about to become Mr. Mitchell's worst nightmare." The privacy screen created an intimate cocoon around their table, muting the ambient sounds of the restaurant to a distant murmur. Dominic had ordered new dishes, delicate pasta with truffle oil, perfectly seared scallops, a salad so fresh it looked like it had been picked minutes ago. The food appeared without fanfare, placed by near-invisible staff who moved with choreographed precision. Lila picked at the pasta, her appetite still absent, but Dominic had been right, small bites did help. The ritual of eating gave her hands something to do, her mind something to focus on besides the surreal turn her evening had taken. "Start from the beginning," Dominic said. He had ordered nothing for himself, just refilled his wine glass with that same deep red vintage. He held it but didn't drink, simply watched her with that unsettling, complete attention. "How did you meet him?" So Lila told him. Haltingly at first, then with gathering momentum as the words she'd kept dammed up inside found their release. She told him about the charity fundraiser, about Darren's charm offensive, about how good it had felt to be pursued, to be wanted. She told him about the gradual shift, the first incident she'd excused, the second she'd rationalized. "He was clever about it," she said, staring at her plate. "He never left marks anywhere visible. Never hit me in public. The bruises were always where clothing would cover them. And he was so apologetic at first. So convincing." "They always are," Dominic said quietly. "In the beginning." She told him about the isolation, how Darren had systematically cut her off from her small circle of friends with manufactured drama and accusations. How he'd wanted her to quit teaching, to be available for him. How he'd monitored her phone, her emails, her every movement. I felt like I was disappearing, Lila whispered. Like I was becoming this hollow thing that just existed to avoid making him angry. Except everything made him angry eventually. What finally made you leave? My neighbor. Mrs. Chen. Lila caught herself, a small, sad smile touching her lips. Mrs. Patterson. She's this tiny 70-year-old widow who refuses to mind her own business in the best possible way. She heard him, heard me, one night, and she called the police. When they came, when that officer sat with me and just listened without judging, something broke open. Or maybe it finally broke free. Dominic's expression remained neutral, but his fingers had tightened almost imperceptibly on the stem of his wine glass. And the restraining order has been violated 8 times in 3 months. Lila's voice hardened with frustration. He sends flowers to the school. Shows up at the grocery store I go to. Calls from different numbers. The police say they're doing what they can, but unless he actually hurts me again. She swallowed hard. They're waiting for it to escalate. Unacceptable, Dominic said flatly. It's the system. The system is broken. He set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. Which is why other systems exist. The implications of that statement hung in the air. Lila should have been frightened by it. Instead, she felt a dark spark of satisfaction. What are you going to do? She asked. What needs to be done? Dominic leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. Tell me, does Mr. Mitchell have business interests? He's a financial consultant. Works with high-net-worth clients, manages portfolios. He's very proud of his reputation. Reputation is fragile, Dominic mused. Especially in finance. Built on trust, on perception. His gaze focused on her with renewed intensity. Has he ever mentioned his clients by name? Sometimes. He liked to brag. Make me feel small by comparison. Lila thought back through the haze of painful memories. There was a real estate developer, I think. Morrison Holdings. And some tech CEO he was always trying to impress. Dominic pulled out his phone, a sleek, expensive model, and typed something with swift efficiency. Trevor Morrison. Yes, that sounds right. Interesting. A small, cold smile touched Dominic's lips. Mr. Morrison owes me several favors. And I happen to know he values discretion and character in his financial advisors. I wonder how he would feel knowing Mr. Mitchell has multiple police reports for domestic violence. Lila's eyes widened. You do that? Just make a call and destroy his career. His career. Dominic's smile faded. Miss Moreau, I'm going to make it so Darren Mitchell becomes a pariah in every circle that matters to him. His clients will drop him. His professional reputation will crumble. The doors that were open to him will close. He will learn what it feels like to be powerless. The vindictive satisfaction Lila felt should have worried her. She'd spent her whole life being the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over, who didn't make trouble. But right now, the thought of Darren facing real consequences for once felt like oxygen after nearly drowning. Why are you doing this for me? She asked again. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Dominic's expression shifted, something almost like offense crossing his features. You are not nobody, Miss Moreau. You are a woman who was brave enough to leave an abusive man, brave enough to rebuild, brave enough to say I'm not comfortable when every instinct probably screamed at you to stay silent. He paused. That is not nobody. That is someone worth protecting. The sincerity in his voice made Lila's throat tighten. She blinked back fresh tears, overwhelmed by the simple act of being seen, being valued, by this complicated, dangerous stranger. I don't even know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Dominic gestured to her plate. Eat. You'll need your strength. For what? For what comes next? He checked his phone as it buzzed silently. His expression darkened. It seems Mr. Mitchell is not accepting his dismissal gracefully. He's currently in the parking lot, making a scene. Ice flooded Lila's veins. He's waiting for me. He was waiting for you, Dominic corrected. My head of security is explaining to him, in terms even a fool can understand, why remaining on the property would be unwise. If he persists, The police will be called. He won't care. He'll just wait somewhere else. He'll follow me home. He always. Lila's breathing accelerated, panic clawing its way up her chest. He always finds a way. Lila. Dominic's voice cut through her rising anxiety. He'd used her first name for the first time, and somehow that intimacy steadied her. Look at me. She did. His dark eyes held hers with absolute certainty. He will not touch you again. Not tonight. Not ever. Do you believe me? It was insane to believe him. She'd known this man for less than an hour. But there was something in the quiet authority of his presence, the evidence of power he'd already demonstrated, that made trust feel less like foolishness and more like the only rational choice. I want to, she whispered. Then start there. He stood, extending his hand to her. Come with me. Lila stared at his outstretched hand. Accepting it felt monumental, symbolic of something larger than just standing up from a table. It felt like choosing to trust again, to hope again, despite every lesson she'd learned about the danger of trusting the wrong person. But Dominic had asked if she was safe. He'd intervened when no one else had. He'd offered her protection without asking for anything in return. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, but gentle. Nothing like Darren's punitive grips. Dominic helped her to her feet with old-fashioned courtesy, then released her hand immediately, respecting her space. Where are we going? Lila asked. Somewhere private. Where we can speak freely. He guided her toward the velvet curtain he'd disappeared through earlier, his hand hovering near the small of her back but not quite touching. Protective without being possessive. They passed through the curtain into a hallway Lila hadn't known existed, wood-paneled and elegant, with recessed lighting that cast everything in warm amber tones. At the end was a door marked simply private. Dominic opened it, revealing an office that was more like a study from an Italian villa. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined two walls, filled with leather-bound volumes in multiple languages. A massive mahogany desk dominated one side of the room, its surface meticulously organized. Original art, expensive, Lila's untrained eye could tell even that much, hung in gilded frames. A leather sofa and two chairs formed a sitting area near a fireplace where flames danced behind ornate screens. It was a room designed for power. For control. Please, sit, Dominic said, gesturing to the sofa. Lila perched on the edge, her hands folded in her lap. Dominic moved to a sideboard and poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into two glasses. He brought one to her. Brandy, he said. For the shock. She accepted it, took a small sip, and felt warmth bloom in her chest. Dominic sat in one of the chairs across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to think carefully before you answer. Lila nodded, her fingers tight around the glass. How far do you want me to go? The question hung between them, loaded with implications. I don't understand, Lila said, though some part of her did. I can make Darren Mitchell's professional life difficult. I can ensure he faces social consequences. I can have him watched, monitored, so that any violation of your restraining order is documented and reported. Dominic's gaze never wavered. Or I can make him disappear from your life more, permanently. Lila's breath caught. You mean? I mean there are ways to ensure a man never bothers anyone again. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing a business transaction. Ways that don't involve violence, before your imagination runs away with you. But ways that are thorough. That's illegal, Lila whispered. Many effective things are. She should have been horrified. Should have stood up, run from this office, called the police. But instead, she found herself asking, have you done things like that before? Yes. The simple honesty of it was somehow more frightening than any elaborate explanation would have been. Who are you really, Dominic Valori? He smiled then, a real smile that held genuine amusement. I told you. I'm a restaurant owner. I'm also a businessman with diverse interests and a network of associates who help me maintain order in my sphere of influence. I came from nothing, Miss Moreau. Built my empire from blood and determination in a world that respects only power. And I've made it my policy to use that power, when I can, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's very noble, Lila said carefully. Or very controlling? Perhaps both. He shrugged. I don't pretend to be a hero. But I am effective. And what do you want from me? In exchange? The question seemed to surprise him. Want from you? Men like you don't do favors for free. There's always a price. Dominic leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression serious. The only thing I want from you, Lila Moreau, is for you to be safe. To reclaim the life that was stolen from you. To teach your first graders and drink your coffee and walk down the street without fear. He paused. If that happens, I am sufficiently compensated. Lila wanted desperately to believe him. But trust had been weaponized against her for so long. I see the doubt in your eyes, Dominic said softly. Good. You should be cautious. You should question. You should protect yourself. He stood, set down his glass. So I'll make you a deal. Give me 48 hours. Stay somewhere safe. I have a property I can offer, completely secure, no strings attached. Let me make some calls, apply some pressure to Mr. Mitchell. If, after 2 days, you want nothing more to do with me or my help, you walk away. No obligations. No consequences. And if Darren comes after me anyway, he won't get the chance. Dominic pulled out his phone again, sent a quick text. I'm assigning someone to you. Her name is Sophia Capulet. Former military, trained in executive protection. She'll stay with you, ensure your safety. Consider her a consultant. I can't afford. You're not paying. He held up a hand to forestall her protest. This is not charity, Miss Moreau. This is investment. I invest in things I value. And I've decided I value your safety. Before Lila could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened into something glacial. What is it? Lila asked, anxiety spiking. It seems Mr. Mitchell has escalated. He's attempted to force his way back into the restaurant. My security has detained him, and the police are en route. Dominic's voice was deadly calm. He's also been making threats. Against you. Against me. Against this establishment. That's just Darren, Lila said bitterly. All threats, and then violence, Dominic finished. Yes. I'm familiar with the pattern. He moved toward the door. Wait here. I need to handle this personally. No. Lila stood abruptly. Don't confront him. He's dangerous when he's cornered. Dominic turned back to her, and the look in his eyes made her realize her mistake. Darren Mitchell was a bully who hurt women weaker than himself. Dominic Valori was something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. Lila, he said gently, I appreciate your concern. But I assure you, I am in no danger from Mr. Mitchell. I don't want you to hurt him. I won't. He smiled slightly. I'll simply have a conversation. Establish boundaries. Help him understand the new reality of his situation. He left before she could protest further, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Lila stood alone in the elegant office, her heart racing. She moved to the window, which looked out over the parking lot. From this vantage point, she could see the scene unfolding below. Darren was there, disheveled now, his earlier polish gone. He was shouting at 2 large men in dark suits, Dominic's security. A police car was pulling into the lot, lights flashing. And then Dominic emerged from the building. Even from this distance, Lila could see the change in Darren's posture. The way he straightened, uncertain for the first time. Dominic approached with unhurried confidence, spoke to the police officers briefly. They seemed to know him, their body language respectful, and then turned to Darren. Lila couldn't hear what was being said, but she watched Darren's face cycle through emotions. Anger, confusion, fear. Dominic spoke for perhaps 30 seconds. Then he turned and walked away, dismissing Darren as if he were nothing. The police officers moved in, speaking to Darren, who was now visibly agitated. One of them was writing something, a citation? A warning? Within minutes, Darren was being escorted to his car, the officers making it clear he needed to leave. And he did. Lila watched his BMW peel out of the parking lot with a squeal of tires, and felt something in her chest loosen slightly. The door opened behind her. She turned to find Dominic had returned, looking completely unruffled. What did you say to him? Lila asked. I explained the situation in terms he could understand. Dominic moved to the sideboard, poured himself a fresh glass of brandy. I informed him that he has two choices: disappear from your life completely, or face consequences he cannot imagine. I also mentioned that I have security footage of him assaulting you in my restaurant, which the police now have a copy of. Combined with your existing restraining order, it's enough for a criminal charge if you choose to press it. Will he listen? Men like Darren always test boundaries. Which is why Sophia will be staying with you, and why he'll be monitored 24 hours a day. If he so much as drives down your street, I'll know about it. It should have felt like too much. Like she was trading one controlling man for another. But somehow, it didn't. Because Dominic was asking, not demanding. Protecting, not possessing. I don't know how to thank you, Lila said quietly. Dominic crossed the room to stand before her, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. He was tall, taller than Darren, but his size didn't feel threatening. Just, solid. Safe. Don't thank me yet, he said softly. The hard part is just beginning. What hard part? Believing you deserve this. Safety. Protection. Peace. His hand rose, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was so tender, so careful, that Lila's breath caught. That will be harder than anything I can do for you. Their eyes met and held. For a moment, the air between them felt charged with something Lila couldn't name. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Then Dominic stepped back, breaking the spell. Come, he said. Let me introduce you to Sophia. And then we'll get you somewhere safe. As Lila followed him from the office, she realized that for the first time in years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. She felt hope. Sophia Capulet was not what Lila had expected. When Dominic mentioned a former military bodyguard, Lila had pictured someone intimidating, perhaps harsh. But the woman who met them in the hallway was petite, barely 5'4", with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile that made her look more like a yoga instructor than a security professional. Miss Moreau, Sophia said, extending her hand. I'm so glad to meet you, though I'm sorry about the circumstances. Her handshake was firm but kind. She wore black pants and a fitted jacket that probably concealed a weapon but looked perfectly professional. Please, call me Lila. Lila. Sophia's smile widened. I promise you, you're safe now. I'll be with you until this situation is resolved, and I take my job very seriously. Sophia was a combat medic before she joined my team, Dominic said. She saved more lives than most doctors. And prevented quite a few deaths too, Sophia added with a wink. Now, I've already secured Mr. Valori's guest property on Maple Ridge. It's quiet, fully equipped, and has excellent sight lines. No one will get near you without going through me first. The efficiency of it all made Lila's head spin. 2 hours ago, she'd been trapped at a table with her abuser. Now she had a bodyguard and a safe house. It felt surreal. I'll need to get some things from my apartment, Lila said. Clothes, my lesson plans for school tomorrow. You're not going to school tomorrow, Dominic said firmly. I have to. My students. We'll have a substitute. His tone brooked no argument. Until we're certain Darren understands the consequences of approaching you, you're not following any predictable routine. That includes your workplace. Lila's back stiffened. You can't just dictate my life. I'm not dictating. I'm advising. Strongly. Dominic's expression softened slightly. But you're right. The choice is yours. I can only tell you what I think is safest. The fact that he backed down, that he acknowledged her autonomy, mattered. Lila took a breath. How long? A few days. A week at most. Dominic glanced at Sophia. Can you take her to the apartment to collect essentials? Of course. I'll have one of the team follow us, make sure we're not tailed. I'm coming with you, Dominic said. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Is that necessary, boss? It is. Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. Sophia nodded and excused herself to make arrangements. Alone again with Dominic, Lila found herself studying him. He'd loosened his tie slightly, and a strand of that silver-threaded black hair had fallen across his forehead, making him look less intimidating. Almost human. You don't have to come, she said. I'm sure you have better things to do than escort me on errands. There is nothing more important than ensuring your safety. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why do you care so much? You don't know me. I'm nobody special. I teach 6-year-olds how to read. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with furniture from IKEA. I'm not worth all this. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he did something unexpected. He gestured to the sofa in his office. Sit with me, he said. There's something I need to tell you. They returned to the office, and this time when they sat, Dominic chose the opposite end of the sofa instead of the separate chair. Close enough to feel intimate, far enough to maintain respect. You asked why I care, he began, his voice lower than usual, almost hesitant. The truth is, you remind me of someone. Lila waited, sensing this was important. Her name was Isabella. Dominic's jaw tightened. My mother. He stared at the fireplace, flames reflecting in his eyes like distant memories. I grew up in Sicily. Very poor. My father was, similar to your Darren. Charming in public. A monster at home. He beat my mother regularly. Broke her ribs, her spirit, her joy. And I was too small, too young, too powerless to stop him. Lila's breath caught. She reached out instinctively, her hand covering his where it rested on his knee. He glanced down at their joined hands with something like surprise. I was 12 when it happened, Dominic continued. He'd been drinking. She'd burned dinner, or maybe she hadn't, maybe he just needed an excuse. I heard her screaming. I tried to intervene, and he touched his left ribs unconsciously. He broke 3 of my ribs and locked me in the cellar. When I finally got out the next morning, I found her at the bottom of the stairs. He said she fell. The police believed him. He was well respected, you see. A merchant. Pillar of the community. Dominic, Lila whispered, her throat tight. I'm so sorry. She died 3 days later. Never woke up. His voice was steady, but Lila could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. And I made a promise to her, in that hospital room, that I would never be powerless again. That I would protect those who couldn't protect themselves. That I would make sure men like my father faced consequences. Is that why you came to America? Eventually. First, I handled my father. He looked at her directly. I was 14 when I killed him. The confession hung in the air. Lila should have pulled her hand away, should have been horrified. But all she could see was a 12-year-old boy with broken ribs, locked in a cellar while his mother died. Self-defense, she asked quietly. That's what they ruled. He came after me one night, drunk and violent. I was bigger by then. Stronger. I fought back. Dominic's eyes were distant. I felt nothing when he died. No guilt. No relief. Just emptiness. Afterward, I had nothing, no one. So I came here, started over. Built an empire from nothing, with the promise to my mother as my foundation. That's why you help abuse victims. I fund 3 women's shelters in this city. Employ several women who are escaping dangerous situations. And when I encounter a man like Darren Mitchell in one of my establishments. His hand turned under hers, their palms pressing together. I remember being that powerless boy. And I make sure he understands what real power looks like. The vulnerability in his admission, the raw truth of his past, created an intimacy between them that felt profound. Lila realized she was crying again, not for herself this time, but for him. For the boy he'd been. For the mother he'd lost. You're not nobody, Lila, Dominic said softly. You're a survivor. Like my mother should have been. And I will not let Darren Mitchell make you another statistic. Their faces were close now, close enough that Lila could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth of his breath. Something electric sparked between them, an attraction that went beyond the obvious pull of rescue and gratitude. This was recognition. 2 damaged souls seeing each other clearly. Dominic's thumb stroked across her knuckles. I should not want this, he murmured. You're vulnerable. You've just escaped one controlling man. The last thing you need is. You're not him, Lila interrupted. You're nothing like him. Are you certain? I'm controlling in my own way. Possessive. I have darkness in me, Lila. I've done things that would horrify you. To protect people. To help them. Sometimes. Not always. His honesty was brutal. I'm not a good man. Maybe I don't need a good man. Lila's heart was racing. Maybe I just need an honest one. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Dominic's gaze dropped to her lips, and Lila realized with a shock that she wanted him to kiss her. Wanted it desperately, despite everything, despite the insanity of the entire situation. But Dominic pulled back, breaking the spell. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. We should go, he said, his voice rougher than before. Get your things. Lila felt the loss of his proximity like a physical ache, but she nodded. He was right. This was too fast, too complicated. She was rebounding from trauma, and he was, well, she still didn't fully understand what he was. Sophia appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Cars ready, Mr. Valori. They left through a private exit, emerging into the cool night air. A black SUV with tinted windows waited, engine running. Sophia opened the back door for Lila, who slid in. Dominic took the seat beside her while Sophia climbed into the driver's seat. What's your address? Sophia asked. Lila provided it, and they pulled out of the lot. She watched the restaurant disappear in the side mirror, thinking of how different she'd felt entering it versus leaving it. That felt like another lifetime. Her apartment was 20 minutes away in a modest complex with peeling paint and a broken gate. Lila felt self-conscious as they pulled up, acutely aware of the contrast between Dominic's world and hers. Third floor, apartment 3B, she said. Sophia parked and scanned the area with professional efficiency. I'll check it first. Wait here. She disappeared into the building. Dominic's phone buzzed, and he checked it. His expression darkened immediately. What is it? Lila asked. Darren Mitchell isn't just a financial consultant, Dominic said slowly, still reading. According to my sources, he's been laundering money for the Kozlov organization. Lila's blood ran cold. Even she knew that name. The Kozlov family was organized crime, Russian mafia with a reputation for extreme violence. That's impossible, she breathed. He's a financial advisor. An advisor who specializes in offshore accounts and complex financial instruments. The perfect cover. Dominic's jaw set. This changes things. Changes them how? Before he could answer, Sophia's voice crackled over the SUV's intercom system. Boss, we have a problem. Someone's been in the apartment. Recently. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. What? Stay in the car, Dominic commanded, already opening his door. But Lila was right behind him, fear propelling her forward. They took the stairs at a run, reaching the third floor to find Sophia standing in Lila's open apartment doorway, weapon drawn. The sight that greeted them made Lila's knees weak. Her apartment had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, cushions slashed open. Her bookshelves, her beloved books, scattered across the floor like casualties. The TV was smashed. Her small kitchen table broken. But it was the message spray painted across her living room wall that made Lila's heart stop. You can't hide from me. In Darren's handwriting. He was here, Lila whispered. After we left the restaurant. While we were talking, he was here, destroying everything Her voice broke. This was more than vandalism. This was a violation, a promise. Darren was telling her that nowhere was safe, that he could reach her anywhere, anytime. Dominic's hand was gentle on her shoulder, turning her away from the destruction. Look at me, Lila. Look at me. She did, and was startled by the cold fury in his eyes. This ends now, he said. No more warnings. No more half measures. Darren Mitchell has made his choice, and now I'll make mine. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Romano? I need everything on Darren Mitchell by morning. Everything. Financial records, associates, daily patterns, where he eats breakfast, who he talks to. And put the word out. No one in the organization does business with him or anyone connected to him. He's blacklisted. Completely. He hung up and made another call. Detective Harris? Dominic Fowlori. I need you at 447 Oak Street, apartment 3B. Breaking and entering, vandalism, violation of a restraining order. Yes, I'll wait for you. Thank you. Sophia was photographing everything with her phone, documenting the damage. We can't stay here, Dominic said. Gather only what you absolutely need. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Lila moved through the apartment in a daze, stepping over the wreckage of her life. Her clothes were shredded, her photos destroyed. The small jewelry box her grandmother had left her, empty, contents scattered. In her bedroom, more spray paint, mine. She grabbed the few items that had survived, her laptop for lesson planning, a few pieces of clothing, her phone charger. Everything else was ruined. When she emerged, Dominic was on the phone again, his voice low and dangerous. I don't care what it costs. I want eyes on him 24/7. And if he so much as breathes wrong, I want to know about it. Sophia touched Lila's arm gently. I'm sorry. I know this is hard. He's escalating, Lila said numbly. Just like the police said he would. But this time, you're not alone. Police arrived within 10 minutes, 2 officers, one of whom greeted Dominic by name with obvious respect. They took statements, photographed everything Sophia had already documented. One of them asked Lila if she'd felt safe with the restraining order. The bitter laugh that escaped her felt like it came from someone else. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. Lila followed Dominic and Sophia back to the SUV, carrying a single bag that held the remains of her life. As they pulled away, she looked back at her apartment building, the home she'd created after leaving Darren, the symbol of her independence and fresh start. He'd destroyed it all in less than an hour. I'm sorry I brought you into this, Lila said quietly. He's dangerous. If he's really connected to the Kozlov family. Then he's made a critical error, Dominic interrupted. Because I have a history with Alexei Kozlov. And he owes me a very significant debt. He looked at her, and despite the fury in his eyes, his voice was gentle. You didn't bring me into this, Lila. I chose to be here. And I don't make choices lightly. What happens now? Now? Now we go to war. Dominic's expression was carved from stone. And Darren Mitchell is about to learn that there are worse things in this world than restraining orders and police reports. The SUV glided through the dark streets, carrying Lila toward an uncertain future. But for the first time since Darren had reappeared in her life, she didn't feel helpless. She felt dangerous. Because she had something Darren hadn't counted on. She had Dominic Fowlori on her side. The safe house on Maple Ridge was beautiful, a modern townhouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and security cameras on every corner. Sophia gave Lila a quick tour, showed her the panic button by the bed, the reinforced doors, the escape routes. None of it made Lila feel safe. She lay awake that first night, staring at the ceiling of a stranger's guest room, her mind replaying the destruction of her apartment on an endless loop. You can't hide from me. The words were burned into her brain. Dominic had left after ensuring she was settled, promising to call in the morning. His absence felt like a physical void. The next 2 days blurred together. Sophia was a constant, reassuring presence, but Lila felt like a prisoner in the beautiful house. She couldn't go to work. Couldn't return home. Couldn't live her life. Darren was still winning. On the 3rd morning, Dominic called. His voice was strained. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Darren's gone to ground. My people can't locate him. Ice flooded Lila's veins. What does that mean? It means he's either scared, or he's planning something. A pause. Lila, there's something else. The Kozlov connection is more complicated than I thought. Darren has leverage with them, information that makes him valuable. Alexei won't just hand him over. So what do we do? I'm working on it. But it may take time we don't have. After he hung up, Lila sat in the silent house, the walls closing in. This was supposed to be over. Dominic was supposed to fix this. But Darren was still out there, still hunting her, still untouchable. That afternoon, Sophia's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. What? Lila asked. What is it? Your school, Sophia said quietly. Someone showed up asking about you. Matched Darren's description. He told the office he was your fiancé, that there was a family emergency. Lila's hands started shaking. Did he? He left when they said they couldn't release information. But Lila. Sophia's expression was grim. He knows your students' names. He was asking about specific kids. The implication hit like a physical blow. Darren was threatening children. Her children. 6-year-olds who trusted her, who looked up to her. I have to go back, Lila said, standing abruptly. I have to protect them. That's exactly what he wants. He's baiting you. I don't care. Lila's voice cracked. I won't let him hurt those kids because of me. She grabbed her phone, dialed Dominic. It went to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Where is he? Lila demanded. Why isn't he answering? Sophia's expression grew more troubled. He's in a meeting with Kozlov. Trying to negotiate. How long? I don't know. Lila felt the walls closing in, her breath coming in short gasps. Darren was threatening children. Dominic was unreachable. She was trapped in this beautiful cage while the people she cared about were exposed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her finger hesitated over the decline button, then answered. Hello, Lila. Darren's voice was poison-sweet. Miss me? Leave my students alone, she hissed. Come talk to me, and I will. Come alone. Or I start visiting their homes. You know I can find them. You know I will. Darren, please. Pier 17. 1 hour. Come alone, or little Emma Rodriguez gets a visit from Uncle Darren. He hung up. Lila stared at the phone, her whole body trembling. Emma was her smallest student, a timid girl who was just starting to come out of her shell. The thought of Darren anywhere near her. I heard, Sophia said quietly. You can't go. It's a trap. I know it's a trap. Lila's voice was hollow. But I can't risk those children. I won't. Then we call Dominic, we wait. There's no time. Lila grabbed her jacket. And Dominic is busy trying to negotiate with gangsters while Darren is targeting 6-year-olds. I'm done waiting for someone else to save me. Lila, don't do this. But Lila was already moving toward the door. Sophia grabbed her arm. If you're going, I'm coming with you. He said alone. I don't care what he said. Sophia's grip was firm. But Lila, you need to understand. If we do this, if we go off mission without telling Dominic, there's a chance. She took a breath. There's a chance we're walking into something we can't walk out of. Lila met her eyes. I know. And you're still going. Those are my kids, Sophia. I became a teacher to protect children, to give them what I never had, safety, stability, someone who sees them. I won't let Darren turn me into another person who failed them. Sophia studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. But we do this smart. And if things go sideways, you run. Promise me. I promise. They left the safe house together, stepping out of protection and into danger. Lila's phone buzzed again, Dominic calling back. She let it ring through to voicemail. Because she'd spent her whole life waiting for someone else to solve her problems, to save her, to make her safe. And it had never worked. Not with her parents, who taught her to stay small. Not with the police, who couldn't protect her from Darren. Not even with Dominic, who was powerful but not omnipotent. If this was going to end, she had to be the one to end it. Even if it killed her. The drive to Pier 17 took 30 minutes. With every mile, Lila felt her resolve harden and her fear crystallize into something colder. Determination. Whatever happened next, Darren Mitchell would learn that she was not his victim anymore. She was done running. Pier 17 was abandoned, a skeleton of rotting wood and rusted metal jutting into the dark water. The warehouses that lined it had been empty for years, windows shattered, graffiti covering every surface. The moon hung heavy and full overhead, casting everything in silver and shadow. Lila's heart hammered as Sophia parked the SUV 2 blocks away. I don't like this, Sophia muttered, checking her weapon. Too isolated. Too many blind spots. That's the point. Lila opened her door. He wants me scared. You don't have to prove anything to him. I'm not doing this for him. Lila met Sophia's eyes. I'm doing it for me. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing to face my fear instead of letting it control me. Sophia's expression softened. You're braver than you know. Or stupider. Sometimes there's not much difference. Sophia handed her a small device. Panic button. Press it if things go bad. I'll be close. Lila tucked it into her pocket and stepped out into the cold night air. The smell of salt and decay hung heavy as she walked toward the pier, her footsteps echoing on the empty street. She found Darren waiting at the end of the pier, silhouetted against the water. He looked disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his usually perfect hair messy. But his smile was the same predatory curve she knew too well. "There's my girl," he said as she approached. "I knew you'd come." "I'm not your girl." Lila stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance. "I'm here because you threatened children. Leave them alone, and I'll talk to you." "Talk to me?" Darren laughed, bitter and sharp. "That's rich. You wouldn't talk to me for 3 months. Wouldn't answer my calls, my messages. You turned me into a criminal, Lila. Got me arrested, humiliated me. You did that to yourself when you put your hands on me." His face darkened. "I loved you. I gave you everything. And you threw it away because you're weak. Pathetic. You needed discipline, guidance, and instead you ran crying to the police like a child. You broke my ribs, Darren." Lila's voice shook but held steady. "You gave me concussions. You made me afraid to exist. That's not love. That's torture. And now you've found yourself a new protector, haven't you?" Darren stepped closer. "Dominic Valori. Do you have any idea what kind of man he is? He's a criminal, Lila. A killer. And you think he's better than me? He's never hit me. That already makes him better than you." Darren's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was crushing, familiar. "You always knew exactly what to say to set me off." Lila's other hand went to her pocket, fingers closing around the panic button. But before she could press it, she heard the click of a gun's safety being released. "Let her go." Sophia emerged from behind a shipping container, weapon trained on Darren. Darren's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You brought backup. I said come alone. I don't take orders from you anymore." "No." Darren's free hand moved to his jacket. "That's unfortunate." He pulled out a phone, pressed a button. Instantly, lights blazed to life around the pier. Lila's blood turned to ice as men emerged from the warehouses, 6 of them, all armed, all moving to surround them. "You see," Darren said conversationally, still gripping Lila's wrist, "I have new friends too. Friends who don't appreciate your boyfriend interfering in their business. Friends who think you might be useful leverage." Sophia's weapon tracked between targets, but even Lila could see they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. "The Kozlov organization sends their regards," Darren said. "They are very interested in having a conversation with Mr. Valori. And you're going to help arrange that." Terror clawed at Lila's throat, but beneath it, something else was rising. Anger. Pure, white-hot fury at this man who had taken so much from her and still wanted more. "No," she said. Darren blinked. "What?" "No. I won't help you. I won't be your hostage or your leverage or your victim. Not anymore." She met his eyes without flinching. "You're pathetic, Darren. You're so weak that the only way you can feel powerful is by hurting people smaller than you. But I'm not afraid of you anymore." It was true. Somewhere between the restaurant and the destroyed apartment and this moment on the pier, the fear had transformed. She could see him clearly now, not as the monster who haunted her nightmares, but as a broken, small man who existed only through the pain he inflicted. And she was done giving him that power. "You stupid." Darren raised his hand to strike her. The gunshot shattered the night. Darren screamed, staggering back, his hand bleeding. The phone clattered to the pier. Sophia had shot it out of his hand with surgical precision. "Next one goes between your eyes," she said calmly. Chaos erupted. The armed men raised their weapons, Sophia dove behind cover, and Lila found herself frozen in the crossfire, her ears ringing from the shot. Then, headlights blazed to life from the street, not one vehicle, but 6. Doors slammed open. More armed men emerged, moving with military efficiency. And at the center of it all, striding onto the pier with the confidence of a man who owned the world, was Dominic Valori. "Stand down," he commanded, and the authority in his voice could have stopped armies. Behind him, to Lila's shock, was a man she recognized from news reports, Alexei Kozlov himself. Tall, silver-haired, radiating cold menace. Kozlov's men lowered their weapons immediately. Darren's hired guns looked between their employer and the new arrivals with obvious confusion. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," Kozlov said, his accent thick. "Mr. Mitchell, you told my associates that you had my approval for this operation." Darren's face went white. I was bringing you Valori, just like we discussed." "We discussed no such thing." Kozlov's smile was a blade. "In fact, Mr. Valori and I have just concluded a very productive conversation. One that revealed several interesting facts about your business practices." "Darren Mitchell has been skimming from your organization," Dominic said flatly. 10% of every transaction he launders. He's stolen nearly $2 million from you over the past 18 months. "That's a lie," Darren shouted. "My accountants verified it an hour ago," Kozlov said. "Along with evidence that you've been selling information to the district attorney's office. You're not just a thief, Mr. Mitchell. You're an informant." The men who had come with Darren suddenly looked at him with undisguised hostility. In their world, there was nothing lower than a rat. "I can explain," Darren pleaded. "I can fix this." But Kozlov had already turned away, dismissing him as irrelevant. He approached Lila instead, and Sophia immediately positioned herself protectively. "Miss Moreau," Kozlov said with surprising gentleness. "My apologies. My organization does not make war on teachers. This man acted without my knowledge or consent." He glanced at Dominic. "Consider the matter resolved." Kozlov's men surrounded Darren, who was still clutching his bleeding hand, his face a mask of terror as he realized how completely his plans had collapsed. Then Dominic was there, standing before Lila, his hands gently cupping her face. "Are you hurt?" His eyes searched hers with desperate intensity. "I'm okay," she whispered. "When Sophia's tracker showed you left the safe house, when I realized where you'd gone," his voice cracked slightly. "Lila, I thought I would lose you before I even," he stopped himself. "Before you even what?" "Before I could tell you that you've become important to me." His thumb stroked her cheek. "That I haven't felt this kind of fear, this kind of need to protect, since my mother. That you make me want to be the good man you think I am." Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks. "You came for me. I will always come for you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. "Always." Lila buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling the solid strength of him. For the first time in years, she felt truly safe. Not because someone was protecting her, but because she'd found the courage to protect herself, and someone who would stand beside her, not in front of her. "What happens to Darren?" she asked quietly. Dominic's arms tightened around her. "His Kozlov's problem now. And trust me, that's a far worse fate than anything the legal system would give him." Lila knew she should feel guilty about that. But she didn't. She felt free. "Take me home," she whispered. "Where is home?" Dominic asked. "Your apartment is. Wherever you are." She pulled back to look at him. "If that's okay." The smile that transformed his face was worth every terrifying moment of the night. "That's more than okay," he said. "That's everything." As Dominic led her off the pier, away from Darren's desperate shouts and toward a future she was finally brave enough to claim, Lila realized something profound. She had spent her whole life being saved. Tonight, she had saved herself. And that made all the difference. 3 weeks later, Lila stood in front of her first-grade classroom, reading Where the Wild Things Are to 22 enraptured 6-year-olds. Little Emma Rodriguez sat in the front row, her eyes wide with wonder, completely safe and unaware of how close danger had come. The bruises on Lila's wrist from Darren's final grip had faded to yellow, then disappeared entirely. Like him. After that night on the pier, Darren Mitchell had simply vanished. No body was found. No arrest was made. He existed now only as a closed case file and a fading memory. Alexei Kozlov had been true to his word, the matter was resolved. Lila had asked Dominic once, late at night in his penthouse apartment where she'd been staying, what exactly resolved meant. It means he'll never hurt anyone again, Dominic had said simply. That's all you need to know. And surprisingly, it was. Lila had discovered that she could live with moral ambiguity far easier than she could live with fear. Now, as the final bell rang and her students gathered their backpacks, chattering excitedly about the weekend, Lila felt something she hadn't experienced in years: contentment. Her life had returned to normal, better than normal. She'd moved into a new apartment, one in a better neighborhood with actual security. Her principal had been understanding about her absence, especially after Dominic made a generous donation to the school's arts program. Miss Moreau. Emma tugged on her sleeve. Is that your boyfriend? Lila followed her gaze to the classroom door, where Dominic stood, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite. Yes, Lila said, warmth flooding her chest. That's my boyfriend. He's pretty, Emma declared, then skipped off to meet her mother. Dominic entered as the last student left, his severe expression softening into a smile reserved only for her. Pretty? He asked, amused. Devastatingly so. Lila accepted the flowers, rising on her toes to kiss him. Even after 3 weeks, the freedom to do so still felt miraculous. What are you doing here? I have news. His expression grew serious. The district attorney's office just announced charges against 3 members of the Kozlov organization, based on information Darren had been providing them. Lila's stomach dropped. Does that mean Kozlov knows the information came from Darren before he disappeared? It changes nothing regarding your safety. Dominic took her hands. But it does mean that Darren's legacy is bringing down the organization he worked for. Poetic justice, in a way. And Kozlov won't retaliate against you. Alexei and I have an understanding. Besides, the arrests work in his favor, removes rivals within his own organization. Dominic's thumb traced circles on her palm. You're safe, Lila. Truly safe. I promise. The weight she'd been carrying for months, years, really, finally lifted completely. There's something else, Dominic said. The women's shelter I fund, Hope Harbor? They want to start a new program. Support groups for domestic violence survivors, led by survivors themselves. He paused. They asked if you'd be willing to share your story. To help lead sessions. Lila's breath caught. The thought of exposing her pain, her shame, to strangers terrified her. But then she thought of other women, trapped like she'd been, believing they were alone. Yes, she said. I'll do it. Pride shone in Dominic's eyes. You're remarkable. I'm learning to be brave. You taught me that. No. He cupped her face gently. You were always brave. I just reminded you. As they stood there in the empty classroom, surrounded by children's artwork and alphabet charts, Lila marveled at how much had changed. She'd come to Restaurant Del Monaco expecting one nightmare, and instead found salvation. Found strength. Found love in the most unexpected place. Come home with me, Dominic said softly. I want to show you something. They drove to his penthouse, Lila's hand clasped in his the entire way. When they entered, she gasped. The space had been transformed. Where once everything had been dark leather and masculine severity, there were now touches of warmth, soft throws, colorful pillows, photographs in frames. And on the dining table, a small box wrapped in silver paper. What's this? Lila asked. Open it. Inside was a key. But not just any key, it was ornate, beautiful, clearly custom-made. It's to the penthouse, Dominic explained. I want you to move in. Officially. Make this space yours, ours. He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. If it's too soon, I understand. But Lila, I'm 43 years old. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, keeping people at a distance. And then you walked into my restaurant, and every wall came down. I don't want to waste time being cautious when I know what I want. What do you want? Lila whispered. You. Every day. Every morning and every night. I want to watch you plan lessons at the kitchen table. I want to hear about your students' triumphs. I want to build a life with you. He took her hands. I know I'm not easy. I'm possessive and controlling and I have darkness in my past. But I swear to you, I will spend every day earning your trust. Protecting your heart. Being worthy of you. Tears streamed down Lila's face. You already are worthy. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, Lila kissed him with all the emotion flooding through her, gratitude, desire, hope, and something deeper that she was finally ready to name. Love. When they broke apart, both breathless, she whispered, "It's a yes. To all of it." Dominic lifted her into his arms, spinning her around, and for the first time in memory, Lila heard him laugh, full and genuine and free. She'd come looking for escape and found home instead. In the arms of a dangerous man with a protective heart, she'd discovered something powerful. She didn't need saving. She needed someone who believed she was worth fighting for. And in Dominic Valori, she'd found exactly that. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dominic's penthouse, painting everything gold. Lila stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up below. Behind her, she heard Dominic moving through the apartment, the familiar sounds of him preparing breakfast, a ritual he'd insisted on since she'd moved in. "You're up early," he said, joining her with his own cup, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Couldn't sleep. Too happy." She leaned into him, still marveling at how natural this felt. "How right? Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Lila turned to face him fully. "Not a single one." It was true. The past weeks had been a revelation. Living with Dominic, she'd discovered a man who was fiercely protective but never controlling. Who asked her opinion on everything from dinner to business decisions. Who made space for her in every aspect of his life while respecting her independence. He'd attended her school's parent-teacher night, charming the other staff despite his intimidating presence. She'd accompanied him to a restaurant opening, holding her own among his powerful associates. They were building something together, a partnership of equals. Sophia called, Dominic said. "The first support group session at Hope Harbor is tonight. Are you ready?" Lila took a breath. "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm ready. I'll be there. In the waiting room. If you need me." I know. That knowledge, that he would always be there, but never smothering, never demanding, made all the difference. That's what makes me brave enough to do it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her principal. "The school board approved the anti-bullying program you proposed. They want you to lead the implementation. Congratulations." Lila showed Dominic, her smile radiant. "I did it. I actually did it." "You're changing lives," he said proudly. "Those children are lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have them. Lucky to have this." She gestured at the penthouse, at him, at the life spreading before them. "Lucky to have survived long enough to find you. We found each other." Dominic set down his coffee and took both her hands. "Lila Moreau, I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered at his serious tone. "What is it?" "I love you." The words were simple, but his voice carried the weight of absolute truth. "I've loved you since the moment you said I'm not comfortable, even though every fiber of your being was screaming in fear. You're the bravest, most compassionate, most extraordinary woman I've ever known. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again." Tears blurred Lila's vision. "I love you too. You showed me I didn't need to be saved, I needed to be seen. And you see me, Dominic. All of me. The broken parts, the healing parts, the strong parts." "You were never broken," he murmured, pulling her close. "Just bent under a weight you were never meant to carry alone." They stood together as the sun rose higher, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and chosen light. Chosen healing. Chosen love. "What do we do now?" Lila asked. "Now." Dominic smiled. "Now we live. We build. We love. We protect what's ours and fight for what matters." He kissed her forehead. "And we do it together." "Together," Lila echoed. That evening, standing before a circle of women at Hope Harbor, women with haunted eyes and healing bruises, women who looked at her with desperate hope, Lila shared her story. Not as a victim, but as a survivor. Not as someone saved by a man, but as someone who'd found her own strength with the right person beside her. When she finished, a young woman raised her hand. "How did you know when to leave?" Lila thought of that moment in the restaurant, of Dominic's card with 3 simple words. "Are you safe?" "I didn't know," she said honestly. I was terrified. But someone asked me the right question, and it made me realize I had a choice. That I deserved better. That fear is powerful, but hope is stronger. After the session, Dominic was waiting exactly where he'd promised. He stood when he saw her, reading her face. How do you feel? He asked. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be. They walked out together into the cool evening, hand in hand. Somewhere in the city, Darren Mitchell was gone, a closed chapter, a fading nightmare. And somewhere, women were finding courage. Children were learning that violence was never love. Healing was happening. Lila looked up at the man beside her, this complicated, dangerous, fiercely protective man who'd shown her that real love didn't cage or control, it liberated and empowered. Thank you, she said. For asking if I was safe. For seeing me when I was invisible. For standing beside me, not in front of me. Thank you, Dominic replied, for teaching me that the strongest thing I can protect is someone's right to be free. They drove home, not to his penthouse, but their home now, and Lila realized that this was what happily ever after really looked like. Not a fairy tale ending, but a brave new beginning. She'd walked into Restaurant Del Monaco as a victim. She was walking into the rest of her life as a survivor. And that made all the difference. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching to the end. Share your opinion about this story in the comments below. I like getting feedback from my audience. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories.